Hello and many thanks for joining us. You're watching Addis News Hour with the news. I'm Tabitha John. Do stay with us. GERD will kick off early power generation from the first 2 units at the end of this year. Early power generation is expected to be launched when the water level reaches 560 meters after this year's second filling. Demis Mekral tells you more.
Ethiopia is pushing ahead the second filling of the Grand Renaissance Dam, despite continued pressure from Egypt and Sudan. GERD is now in tangible progress and almost 80% of the entire work is already done. The hydropower dam is set to generate 400 megawatt of electricity through the 2 completed units in the near future. This, according to GERD negotiator Gideon Asfaw, is more than any of other dams' current producing capacity across Ethiopia.
በሁለቱ ተርባይኖች ለምሳሌ ሙሉ ካፓሲቲው 750 ሜጋዋት ነው የምንለው።
The 2 turbines have the capacity to generate 750 megawatts of electricity when going fully operational. Now we're expecting at least 400 megawatts of electricity from the 2 turbines, given the amount of water we will hold during the second filling. 400 megawatt is of course beyond the power generation capacity of Tekeze and other dams.
ሁለቱ ተርባይኖች የሚያመርቱት ማለት እነ ተከዜ ሙሉ ምርታቸውን ከሚሰጡት ከፍ ያለ።
It is also expressed that the power transmission line is already constructed to transmit the power from GERD to the national grid.
ዋና ማስተላለፊያ መስመሩ ከሆሎታ
650 kilometer power transmission line is already completed from GERD to Holeta. This automatically brings the power from GERD to the national grid without any possible delay.
The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is expected to double the country's power generating capacity upon reaching fully operational.
ዛሬ ባለው የኤሌክትሪክ ሬት ብናስበው ወደ 1 ቢሊዮን ዶላር ማለት ነው። ይሄ አመታዊ ቋሚ ገቢ
The 2 turbines have the capacity to generate 750 megawatts of electricity when reaching fully operational. Now we are expecting at least 400 megawatts electricity from both turbines combined, given the amount of water we will hold on the second filling. 400 megawatts is of course beyond Tekeze and other dams' power generating capacity. The dam will generate massive electric power which can be sold $1 billion annually in the current market. The dam will also help us to provide enough power to our industries, and we can expand them without power constraints. In a nutshell, Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam will have multifaceted benefits.
The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam for Ethiopia is a landmark project with extraordinary national significance. The power plant is believed to be a pillar for Ethiopia's future economic and energy security.
For thousands of years, the peoples of the Horn of Africa have revered the mighty Nile. Its spiritual significance to these lands has been enshrined in poetry, music, and spoken word for time immemorial. And in a land that is holy to Christians and Muslims and followers of many faiths, these waters hold a place in the hearts of millions of Africans. And in all this time, the waters have flowed with only a dream of being able to harness and help bring millions of women, children, and men out from darkness. Today, a new dawn is upon us, when a continent can rejoice in unison. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam stands as a beacon of hope for all Africans. The use of a hydroelectric dam which does not consume the water, but rather allows it to continue its flow to our brothers and sisters in Sudan and Egypt, will finally allow the lights to turn on in all of the African Nile Basin countries. Since the dawn of time, Ethiopia, who contributes 80% plus of the waters, has used 0%. Today, more than 60% of Ethiopians do not have access to basic electricity. Ethiopia has watched as her soil and minerals be swept away to irrigate the cotton farms of Egypt, while her mothers still carry firewood upon their backs and sit in darkness. The time for a fair and equitable share of the Nile is now. The time for all 11 African nations who feed the Nile to share in its life-giving potential is now. This is truly a dam of inclusivity, of kindness, and of shared prosperity. Light, energy, education, food security, and a chance for prosperity for millions. This is Africa's dam. This is our dam. This is my dam.
Ethiopia, Sudan and Egypt have repeatedly failed to break the deadlock over their dispute on the Grand Renaissance Dam Ethiopia is erecting on the river Abai. Ethiopia often accuses Egypt and Sudan of their attempts to internationalize and securitize the matter rather than seeking for a mutually benefiting agreement. Egypt and Sudan, on the other hand, have taken the matter twice to the UN Security Council as a last resort, but failed to get what they wanted. Solomon Danye takes us through some of the commentaries of members of the Security Council.
Last week, the UN Security Council deliberated on the issue of the Nile. Sudan and Egypt entreated to the Council as a last resort to reverse Ethiopia's unstoppable move of filling its mega dam. The result, however, was counterproductive for Egypt and Sudan, but a very good platform for Ethiopia to unveil the truth to the rest of the world. Almost all members of the Council backed the AU-led negotiation, which Ethiopia was determined to stick to. Parfait Onanga Nyanga, special envoy of the Secretary-General for the Horn of Africa on the occasion, said, "The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam encapsulates the conflicting narratives, hopes and fears, challenges and opportunities related to water usage, security, and energy in Egypt, Ethiopia, Sudan, and the wider Horn." He stressed that each of the countries sharing the Nile waters has both rights and responsibilities, and the use and management of this natural resource requires the continued engagement of all nations involved in good faith with a view to reaching common ground. Mona Jewel of Norway also agreed that Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan have legitimate interests in the Nile and its water resources, emphasizing that a sustainable solution to the dam issue can only be found by the states themselves. Noting that much has already been agreed through the Declaration of Principles, she described the latter as a good framework within which to seek equitable and reasonable use of the Blue Nile. What remains is for all sides to reach consensus on the modalities for future cooperation based on those principles and on transparency and trust, she said, stressing that this requires constructive engagement, political will, and the courage to find compromise. She echoed calls for the three countries to refrain from any action that could undermine negotiations. Martin Kimani of Kenya, recalling that the objectives of the 1999 Riparian Nile Basin Initiative included developing the basin's water resources in a sustainable and equitable way, he said the goal of the region's peoples is only to throw off the shackles of poverty and the ills of war. Kenya is confident that Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan will make the principle of African solutions for African challenges a reality, he said. Barbara Woodward of the United Kingdom emphasized her country's strong emphasis on consensus around issues affecting a shared natural resource, adding that many of the elements needed to reach consensus on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam are captured in the 2015 Declaration of Principles, in particular the commitment not to cause significant harm and the one relating to equitable and reasonable utilization. The entire session of the Council can be summed up as a strong direction for all parties to solve their problems through negotiations under the auspices of the African Union.
Ethiopia is poised to doubling its power generating capacity when fully realizing its construction of Grand Renaissance Dam. The expectation is huge, but the challenges are enormous, from lower riparian countries even taking GERD issues to the United Nations Security Council. But both Sudan and Egypt couldn't succeed. To shed more light on the matter, here is Professor Yilma Seleshi on the phone. Welcome, Professor. What an honor to have you.
Thank you for inviting me in this program.
Good. So how did you find the recent victory of Ethiopia in the United Nations Assembly as the Security Council redirected the GERD negotiations back to the African Union? Tell us your feelings on this matter.
Yeah, I'm very glad that the Security Council understood the matter. It is an issue of the three countries. They have to be solved by themselves with guidance of and facilitation of African Union. So they capture this element and they send it back to the Security Council. First, even the first place, Egypt and Sudan should not have attempted to forward that to Security Council. So it's quite a success.
Very good. So this is just a turning point to the negotiating countries. But how do you think the way forward is to be successful in these negotiations?
Yeah, the very issue itself has not been dealt even at the Security Council level. So if I explain a little bit on this, regarding the GERD filling aspect, already the three countries experts have agreed. Only few matters remains. So the critical matter is about the future water use of Blue Nile. Deliberately, Egypt and Sudan, they do not raise that in that manner. They say it on the operational aspect. So the future use of Blue Nile is a very sensitive matter for both Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia. You know, we already agreed in Declaration of Principles in 2015. Blue Nile is a significant resource for each of the three countries. There is no distinction between the importance of Blue Nile, more for Egypt and Sudan and less for Ethiopia. They want the river for drinking, irrigation, food, and electricity, and aquaculture. Ethiopia also wants it that way, no less. It's not, they frame that what the Blue Nile for Ethiopia is now stay with generating electricity. All upstream development, upstream of GERD, should be regulated by Egypt and Sudan. That is their way of thinking. That's the way they frame. So the solution for this, it takes a little bit longer, more discussion, and from Egypt and Sudan side to drop their monopoly of the Nile. That means the 1959 agreement.
Indeed.
So there is a very serious matter remaining among the three countries to sort out.
Absolutely. Professor Yilmaz Seleshi, thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing us your insights. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD, on the Nile. GERD will be the 8th largest in the world. Here's why everyone needs to support GERD. First, the filling of the dam is conducted only during heavy rainfall months of July and August. So, the dam does not reduce water availability downstream. Second, GERD offers many benefits to Egypt and Sudan, including reduction in floods and evaporation losses. Third, Ethiopia is building this $5 billion dam using its own money. Fourth, GERD brings some fairness to Ethiopia. Ethiopia provides 85% of the Nile's waters, but receives nothing. Egypt contributes 0% but has received the lion's share of it. Last but not least, GERD will pull millions out of poverty. GERD will ensure that Ethiopia will meet the UN's development goal on energy. For those reasons, GERD is a project everyone needs to support.
Welcome back again. A scholar says statements from the Western countries that the ceasefire is actually a siege does not consider the facts on the ground. It is disclosed that the rebel group has still not abstained from waging war. Goshu Melliso has the details.
It has been over a week ago the Ethiopian government declared a unilateral ceasefire. According to the government, the ceasefire was decided to avert international community's pressure and to create more humanitarian access. Talking to ETV, political analyst Brooke Hailu said statements from the US and Western that a unilateral ceasefire is a siege doesn't consider the facts on the ground.
What is meant by not make a siege? Who makes a siege? Aren't the Tigrayan people Ethiopians? Isn't the Ethiopian federal government responsible for the well-being of the Tigrayan brothers and sisters? Isn't the government putting up food, buying humanitarian assistance, buying food from abroad? Isn't the Ethiopian government putting 70% of the humanitarian assistance? While the United Nations, the World Food Program, OCHA, and all the others, UNICEF, and all the others have put so far only 30%. You know, a poor country like Ethiopia, which is struggling. Isn't that tells us something? Isn't that a statement that the government and people of Ethiopia care about their Tigrayan brothers and sisters?
Saying the rebel group is not desisted from waging war, Brooke stressed the international community should condemn this act and put pressure on the rebel group.
The unilateral ceasefire. And how was it reciprocated? It took the rebel groups 3-4 days, even to. That tells me, there is some kind of low level of excitement. Why is it? Is it continuation of the war? Is that the objective? And then the spokesperson goes out and says, we will march if need be as far as this region, Amara region, and then as far as the Eritrea, are we going back to war? Is Eritreans because you are inviting trouble, like sending the rockets in November, that will be saying, hey, Eritreans, please come, join us, join the war. You know what I mean? So these kinds of reckless statements should have been condemned by America, the United Kingdom, and all Western countries. Should be condemned. It is reckless.
A spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Dina Mufti, in his recent briefing urged the international community to play their fair responsibility against the PLF's rebel group aggressive move.
Ceasefire is unilateral, and it's up to the other side to take measures. And we don't care about the reactions from the outlawed side. And we did it for the benefit of the people of Tigray. We did it for the prevalence of peace and security. We did it because we heard about the advices and concerns of the international community as well. But it is up to the other side to also take the same measures. Now, the ball is in the court of the international community to press on the other side to take the same measure. Unfettered access was requested. We did it. Investigation of the human rights violations has been requested. We did it because now, as you know, the African Human and People's Rights Commissions, as well as the UN commissions, together with the Ethiopian pertinent authorities, are undertaking that. We accepted that one. The last issue was the ceasefire. We did it. Now, where is the ball? Where is the ball? The ball is not in our court. So it's also a responsibility of the international community to play fair and to take this issue to the other side as well.
The international community has been calling Ethiopian government for a unilateral ceasefire. However, after the ceasefire declared, they are reserved to comment on the matter. Reports indicate that many civilians and refugees in Tigray have been killed by the rebel group after the National Defense Force withdrew from Mekelle.
The ceasefire, meant for creating better conditions for the entire Tigray, doesn't seem as productive as it had been told. Still, now the rebel group is in attack of citizens in various areas. To brief us over the matter, we have a phone conversation with a lawyer, Fasil Seleshi. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us, Fasil Seleshi.
Thank you, Tabitha, for having me. That I couldn't be able to hear your voice properly. I don't know why. Maybe technical problems.
You're welcome. So what are your observations on the unilateral ceasefire agreement that is declared by the federal government in the state of Tigray?
Well, it is well appreciated by the measure taken by the Ethiopian government is well taken by the international community as well as by Ethiopian people. That the Tigrayan people have to get the access for humanitarian assistance by the aid agencies, as well as you know that now is the time for Ethiopian rainy season, so that the agricultural practice has to continue, and the civilian farmers have to plow their land and operate their agriculture properly. So that the government has taken a wise decision in order to give the Tigrayan people get full assistance, humanitarian or whatever assistance they needed at this time. So it is well appreciated and well taken especially by Ethiopian people. The Ethiopian people appreciated measures taken by the government of Ethiopia. This is what I can say shortly about the ceasefire measures taken by the Ethiopian government.
Okay, Fasil, how do you reflect on the matter in accordance to international law, especially in TPLF breaching the ceasefire and pressing ahead with attacking civilians in different areas? How does that go in accordance to the international law?
Well, as you will know that the measures taken by the Ethiopian government is not, international by its nature, because the operation is full of law enforcement operation. It is not a military or a warlike measure. But Ethiopian government is not under international obligation to ceasefire, but it has taken a wise decision so as to reduce international pressure against unfounded international pressures against the government, while the international community is not blaming the rebel group, whereas the blame was totally against the Ethiopian government, which is unacceptable under international law. However, the Ethiopian government was benevolent enough to give access to humanitarian assistance to the Tigrayan people, and as you know that some of the people of Tigray have been stabbing the military force, Ethiopian military force, who were there to enforce law and order. However, some civilians are taking part in the law enforcement operation, and the civilians are attacking. We are found to attack Ethiopian armed forces. So Ethiopian armed forces has to retreat so as not to take any negative measures against civilians, which will ultimately take Ethiopian government responsible under international humanitarian law. Therefore, Ethiopian government has taken a wise decision so that the military force does not have to take any negative measures against the civilians. So the Ethiopian military does not have to fire a gun against civilians. So that's why one of the reasons why Ethiopian government withdrew itself from the Tigray region, I think.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Fasil, for that insight.
You're welcome, Tabitha.
The first humanitarian convoy of the World Food Programme WFP to enter Tigray in 2 weeks has arrived in Mekelle City. WFP expressed the need to continue delivering 1,000 metric tons of life-saving food on 40 trucks a day to Tigray to meet the emergency food needs of 2.1 million people. The first Higher Education Research, Technology and Industry Linkage Convention 2021 kicks off in Addis Ababa in the presence of senior government officials, including President Sahle-Work Zewde and various stakeholders. Scholars, presidents and deans of higher education institutions, representatives of the business community, and partners are also in attendance of the convention, which is underway under the motto of Towards a Knowledge-Driven Economy. The convention is aimed to link researches undertaken by higher education institutions with technology and industries with a view to realize knowledge-driven economy. Families of victims of the two 737 Boeing MAX crashes that killed 346 people in Indonesia in 2018 and Ethiopia in 2019 have begun to receive payments from the $500 million settlement agreement reached in the case against Boeing. Rebek Law Chartered, which represents more than 90 clients, made the announcement after at least 3 years of litigation. Quote unquote, for most of our clients, this puts an end to the civil and criminal cases filed against Boeing after the tragic crashes of Lion Air JT610 on October 29, 2018, and Ethiopian Airlines ET302 on March 10, 2019. Manuel von Riebeck of Riebeck Law Chartered said in a statement. The Ethiopian Airlines jet headed for Nairobi, Kenya, crashed shortly after takeoff from Addis Ababa's Bole International Airport, killing all 149 on board, including 32 Kenyans. At least 30 nationalities were on board. Early last week, the U.S. government opened a $500 million victim fund as part of the settlement to compensate the heirs, with part of 156 million shillings hitting each of Kenyan's families' accounts Thursday and Friday. The payment comes barely a month after a Kenyan family of a victim of the 2019 Ethiopian airline crash agreed to a settlement of 327 million shillings to drop a court case against American aircraft maker Boeing. The final report on the Boeing 737 MAX, released in September 2020 by a legislative committee in the United States, found repeated and serious failures by Boeing and identified the key factors that contributed to the Boeing 737 MAX crash, including design flaws, profit and production priorities at the expense of safety. Ethiopia and Russia have signed military cooperation agreement after discussing several areas of partnership for 3 days. Finance Division State Minister of the Ethiopian National Defense Force, Marta Luigi, said the agreement signed will have a paramount significance in transforming the long-standing relations between the two nations to a higher level. The agreement will be focusing on transforming capacity of the National Defense Force in knowledge, skill, and technology. The 11th Ethiopia-Russia Military Technical Cooperation Forum reviewed the activities that have been undertaken subsequent to the 10th edition of the forum and set directives to future endeavors. In business news, last week, the Ethiopian parliament unanimously approved over 561 billion